Peace, love, and joy. This is part 4. I want to know what love is. First extra credit question. Who sang this song probably in the late 1970s? Anyone want to unmute and give me an answer?
I know who it is. It's just escaping me at the moment.
Can you give us a hint?
Yes, they are not necessarily a citizen of this country, so they must be a
Foreigner.
There you go.
Okay.
I typed in, I want to know what love is, and then I wrote -Christian song and came up with a video on YouTube that is beautiful. I sent a text out tonight, and it's the same rendition, but not the same video. It's by a man named David Phelps, who redid it with a different level, probably of passion. And you can take that same song, he didn't change the words, and hear it as a Christian song, and it's absolutely fabulous in that context. So it fits our subject tonight. I want to know what love is. This is our first session on love. You finished last week with peace. We may come back as a recall later when we finish up this entire subject for the whole session. But for now, we have shifted from peace to love. Quick question. What makes love so daunting? Why is love so difficult to share with others or to give to others? Why is love so difficult to receive from others? And I'm speaking of the fullness of love in each of those questions. Okay. I love my books. I'm staring at one of my bookshelves behind me. I love my books, but I don't love them, do I? I mean, do I truly fully love them? Yes. For a reader, I love my books. For those of you who aren't readers, you think I'm crazy. I can't prove your theory. I probably am, but not because of my love for books. But we use that word kind of flippantly for a kind of a general statement. So I mean the fullness of love when I say this. What makes the fullness of love so daunting? Why is it so difficult to share or to give to others? Why is it so difficult to receive? How often is love received in its fullness? And is that the issue of the giver, or is that the issue of the receiver? Better yet, how often have you specifically received genuine love? I've had a lot of very, very loving things happen in my life. I'm not certain I can assign genuine love as receiving in each of these cases. I don't know. I have a tendency to lean in and receive it as such, but how can I be sure? In your life, you're only answering for yourself. Has love always been full? Always been felt in its fullness? Always been given in its fullness? And what have your specific experiences with love in your life been like, felt like? I know that's a heavy question to end this slide with, but I want you to think about that one. What has your experience with love been like? Okay, let's do a little deeper study in love and maybe why there's a pause when we start to think about love. So what does love really mean? Research has defined when I say research, this is psychological research, by the way. Research has defined 2 major types of interpersonal love. One is passionate love, one is compassionate love. We're also going to study the Greek terminology as well. But first, this kind of general swipe at what love is on an interpersonal level. Passionate love is romantic love, physical attraction, desire. We're going to see that as eros later, but for now, passionate love. Second type of interpersonal love is compassionate love. Long-term romantic partners, other deeply bonded relationships, not necessarily romantic, And again, we're going to break this out a little bit better as we dissect it a little more than just two different. But this is a great overview of interpersonal love. So as an example, with deeply bonded relationships, friendships, if you will, as well as romance, but friendships, if you will, think of the attachment between a caregiver and children. And I'm thinking of Candace right now, just because that's my world. Candace watches two of her grandchildren twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And there is a love between them that is extraordinary. Then I think of caregivers being parents. And while our granddaughter, Charlie Joe, has such a deep love for Candace, when Charlie Joe sees her mom and her dad, a whole different reaction, a whole different compassion. So people can love others, and as I talked about my books earlier, even things, in multitudes of ways. And we often do. We may use the word love incorrectly at times, as I may have in the last slide. Speaking of my love for my books, excuse me while I pause and stare longingly at my books. So dependent on the individual, we love things. One of my first loves in my life was a 1976 Toyota Celica. I loved my Celica. I was a young teenager. That got all my attention and all my affection. So we're talking about things deeper than that, but sometimes things are loved. What does love really mean? This question has inspired. Think of the songs alone that love has inspired. Think of the poems. Think of the odes to different individuals. Think of the narratives. Think of the conversations maybe that you've had. It is the #1 subject matter for all the above. It's a very complicated emotion. We all experience it on one level or another, but we all most likely experience it differently. And in each of these examples, we probably experience it differently. Do I love you all in the same manner I love my children, that I love God, that I love Candace, that I love my books? Do we have different levels and different definitions of love as we speak to those? Just consider what resonates with you. And even better yet, if there is a significant person in your life, think of the difference in how you need love spoken to you and how they do. One of my favorite premarital sessions that I do when I'm going to marry someone, we go through at least 5, sometimes many more, but at least 5 sessions. One of those sessions is focused on the language of love, the 5 languages of love. Okay, and what that speaks to is what makes you tick. And it's important for us to understand each other in any relationship, but especially in as people are planning to get married, and understand what makes them tick. Meaning, if I come home once a week and Candace hands me flowers as I come in the door, and that's her language of love, she likes gifts, and so she gives that to me. What if that doesn't do anything for me? So here she's handing me something from the bottom of her heart, and I'm not receiving it with the same level of love that she's giving it. So it's important to understand the language of love that each of us speak. Some of you like to be stroked with words, with affirmations. Sweetheart, you look beautiful today. Or I love when you do this. I love when you do that. Thank you for doing this. Whatever it might be. Words of affirmation. Sometimes for some people that really works. Other people, they just want time together. You never sit and talk to me anymore. We sit and we watch and stare at TV together, but we never talk together. That person just wants, that language that they speak in love is quality time together, eyeball to eyeball, not side by side. Third language of love is receiving gifts, flowers, whatever it might be. Fourth language of love is acts of service, doing for one another. Whatever that might be. And the fifth is physical touch, true romantic expressions of affection. Came in, maybe you come in the house every day and same person carrying those flowers and all they wanted was a hug. Thanks for this $25 bouquet of flowers, but really all you had to do is give me a hug. That would have spoken to my heart much differently. So love is spoken and received differently from all of us. Just an example, that's all. How difficult love can be. We all have our own way of giving. We all have our own way of receiving love. And especially when you start to dissect all your relationships, your relationship with your neighbor, your relationship with your best friend, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with your children, your grandchildren, your brothers and sisters in church, all different roles that you serve in each of these relationships, different ways of giving and receiving love in all of those. Very complicated. So let's go through the eight definitions of love by way of the Greeks, because really this is the source that most of us still utilize. 4 of them are accepted, and those will come later, and 4 are identified, but truly not numbered amongst in most conversations. The first is, I think, pronounced ludus. And it's playful love, flirtatious. Early in a relationship, it's that when you crush on one another, no real tie to each other, just flirty. It's often during the courting stage, the dating stage, and it shows up in very sophomoric kind of behavior, laughing, teasing, giggling together. So anyway, that's the first. The second is philatia, is how I pronounce that. It's really defining self-love, self-compassion. When I say self-love in most conversations, especially to spiritual conversations, self-love is not necessarily a good thing, but self-love is. I want us to understand that. Love God, love others as you love yourself. So there is a really healthy self-love. But too much or too little, I call it the Goldilocks effect. Too much or too little can be ineffective, in fact, dangerous. So anyway, it's a very, very important stage. Needs nurturing in healthy ways. So healthy self-love fosters an ability to love others. If I am needy and still needing love from others because I don't have a healthy self-love, I'm always taking. I'm not able to give. So we got to find that just right chair in that home, that Goldilocks home. So we got to figure out, what is it, where is it, how is it, why is it that my love for myself is a healthy love. It manifests first selfishly, and that can be plus. Selfish love, take care of yourself first so that you can take care of others, can be positive. But selfish love also can be very, very negative. And then pride in oneself. Again, it can be positive. I take care of myself. I have enough dignity about myself. I care for myself and I honor myself. Or I can have too much pride and I can't have nothing to share with you because it's all about me. So both can go over the top and be ineffective. The third one is pragma. It's an enduring love, practical, committed, compassionate love. The best example I could find in my studies was, and I have a dear, dear friend who I knew in West Palm Beach, and he married and broke away from his family. His family were Sikh, and he had the long beard. He had his hair tied up in his turban. All of these very, very strong statements of his belief. He cut his hair, shaved his beard. We found this very handsome young man underneath all that fuzz once we saw him shaved down and cut, and he married. He tried to Americanize himself, and within a year, that marriage dissipated. It failed completely. His parents had arranged a marriage for him per his belief system, and he returned to his beliefs. He married that woman that he didn't even know her, and she was part of what he was rebelling against. Today, 25 years later, they are completely in love and in a very, very healthy relationship. I think this is pragmatic kind of love. This is an arranged marriage that grows into a long-term loving relationship. That was one of the stronger examples of pragma. Mania or mania is, I say mania because it defines it better for me to understand. It's obsessive love. The best word to use so that you understand is toxic love. found often amongst codependent relationships, an imbalance of affection, insecurity, clinginess, where the other person can't ever be out of their sight. If codependent, it's very, very hard to repair such a status. So anyway, these are the four that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on as we've put more focus on the other four acknowledged loves. So the first one is Eros. And my kind of cheat sheet is to think of Cupid with arrows. It's romantic, passionate love. Think of the arrows that Cupid would shoot at your heart. So to remember this one, just think romance through Cupid's arrows. Romance, passion, physical attraction, all of these intoxicating, all of these exciting to experience, especially in the newness of any relationship. It's the attraction that one feels and experiences when they're together with that person that they feel kind of lusty about, in that newness of it. Time will dictate Eros. And what I mean by that is, the question is, will our love that starts so fast and so strong, will it bear out or will it fade away? Will it bear out or will it fade out? Might be a better way to say that. I've used this next section often when I tie Eros into it, and it's the 5 stages of a relationship. The first stage is the merge. Opposites attract, as we all have heard the phrase. Think of the merging of these two opposite worlds. I remember when Candace and I first started dating, this ridiculous Floridian kid came up into a very traditional Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, and nothing fit well, nothing. At that point, I was defensive and I could see all my side. Today, at this stage of life, I take her parents' side completely in every part of the conversation. I now see what they saw when this young person who had none of those traditions walked into their world. So for Candace and I, the merge was these two opposite upbringings just kind of hitting together face to face. The second stage is, as we start to get used to one another in a relationship, doubt and denial. That's when you have your first pull away. Is this really going to work? We are so opposite. What was once so beautiful now feels so wrong. And so often the breakup happens in doubt and denial. If you survive doubt and denial in a relationship, here's where the majority of breakups happen. Disillusionment, the third stage. That's where we start to see, sadly it says disillusionment, but that's really where we start to see each other clearly. We see each other with clear eyes, and that's the disillusionment. We start to see, oh, he isn't what I thought he was. He isn't just what my parents said about him. So Candace really had an uphill climb, I'm certain, to get through disillusionment. And then the fourth is the decision. When you get through those stages, the lusty merge side, then the doubt and denial, a mental thing, then the disillusionment, which is much more physicality and arguing, going back and forth, and then the decision, is this right for us? Are we supposed to be together? And if we are, this is where really coordination happens and people start to negotiate and find yes or no answers to their relationship and decide whether or not to proceed. And then number 5 is wholehearted love. Once you get through the rough points, now you're ready fully to engage after that decision. I often tell people that one of the toughest years of our marriage was also followed the best year, one of the best years of our marriage. Our first year was absolutely wonderful. Candace had lived in Aliquippa for the 3.5 years of dating. I had lived in West Palm Beach for the 3.5 years of dating. Our first year was wonderful. We finally were living in the same home. We finally had our own time together. But that second year, we kind of skipped probably some of these stages and had to live them all together at one time. And so that second year, we started to have to get to know each other, what the faces meant and what the signs were, and push through that. So wholehearted love for us came probably a little bit later than in most relationships. 40 years later, by the way, we're doing fine. Understand this: passion does not always necessarily result in compassion. That's why the merge and wholehearted love are far, far apart. As the word of God says about heaven and earth, a great gulf between. There's a great gulf between the merge and wholehearted love. And it takes a while to work through that. Again, defining love and the difficulties of love and why love is so daunting. Remember the first couple questions I asked you. Why is love so tough to get through or even to accept? So philia is friendship love, deep friendship, intimate, authentic, long-lasting, platonic relationships in love. This closeness often manifests through confiding, trusting, respecting on very, very personal levels. And by the way, sometimes these are deeper than our romantic relationships, and definitely as impactful as those romantic relationships, which is why husbands and wives need those other relationships in order to move forward. Those are very, very important to their own health and sanity, if you will. And so philia love is very, very important to many people. So much so that the ending of such intimate relationships can initiate a depth of pain and loss that feels like a romantic breakup. I often tell people right after I was baptized, I had a best friend that we did everything together. The problem was most of the things we did together, I didn't want to do after I committed to Jesus Christ. And so I kind of jokingly say, but it's really not. It's just an easy out to get a snicker or a smile from people. I tell people I had to break up with him. And that's what it felt like for me. It felt like a full breakup because he was no longer healthy for my spiritual life. And I had to separate. So that friendship love that I experienced with him had to end in that moment. And truly, never to be restored. The next one is storge. It sounds like a zzz sound there. I'll say storge because maybe that's how you say it, but it's actually storge. This is familial love, referred to as empathy bond. We are empathetic with one another in our family. We know what it feels like in our family. Family is defined on two different levels, but it's normally, when you hear storge, it's normally family members. But often, close family friends and or friends from childhood fall into this, move from philia and move into this. Those are those rare cases that are seen as family members when they may not actually be. Difference from philia as it's not exclusively blood as the connection. Early memories and familiarity drive these relationships. Compassionate, protective, deeply rooted in memory. So going back, you've gone through 3: eros, philia, storge, and now the one that really we're probably most inclined to be speaking of on Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, and Sundays is agape. This is universal love. I told you a story of a conversation I remember as a young person where in a certain branch I was in, they were talking about when we get to heaven, will we know our loved ones as our loved ones? And everyone, not everyone, but the majority, especially the ministry, was saying, no, we won't. And I remember I wasn't strong enough, nor did I have enough behind me to voice an opinion, but I remember thinking, I think we will. And so I made that kind of a study for a while and tried to decide and be able to defend this. And as I read into agape as a subject matter, I found immediately that this definition supports my theory completely, which is I will know Candace as my wife in heaven. But I will have a universal love, an unconditional, selfless love that's so strong in the resurrected form that I'll know that she was my wife, but I won't love her differently, nor more than I love any of you today, because I will finally find the pureness of love when my soul is resurrected. So, agape love is universal love, unconditional, selfless love that creates a compassion for everyone. Everyone ties for first in how we love one another under agape love, often declared as godly love, loving kindness for all living things, extended with knowledge with no expectation for anything in return. Really rarely heard of while in the flesh. This is what we long for, but few people are able to accomplish this. It's pure, conscious love. Pure love. And this, anytime you hear Jesus Christ speak of loving one another, this is the love he's directing us to. It's faithfulness, commitment, act of willing moral nature and strong character. This is what agape love is. As a word that's used in connection with unconditional, agape is often called disinterested love, meaning I have no specific interest in you versus someone else. I love you both equally. Candace on the left, you on the right. It's disinterested love, meaning I love you both the same. Not because of my interest in Candace do I love her more. So Martin Luther King said this, and I used this on a Sunday recently. I just can't remember which sermon it was, so I apologize, especially to those of you who were there that Sunday. But Martin Luther King, as a minister, said this: agape is disinterested love. Agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people or any qualities that people possess. It's disinterested. It begins by loving others just for their sakes. Therefore, agape makes no distinction between friend and enemy. It's directed, and I would interject equally, it's directed towards both. It's beautiful. Okay, as human beings, we don't just want love. We have found this as a fact. We need love. All human beings possess an intense desire. This is want. Desire to feel love and to be loved. The need to be loved, want and need, the need to be loved has been tested and experimented, and they show that it's often considered the single most basic and fundamental need in humankind. One way this is proven is through what's called, and you could put quotes on this if you wanted to, contact comfort, which means in essence to be held, to be touched, to be stroked. They have done studies with apes where they remove the ape from the mother's care. And they've also done studies with human beings as well, but even to the rawness of with animals. Okay, this is called contact comfort. Here is the fact found. Babies who are deprived of contact comfort, stroking, holding, touching, particularly during the first 6 months after their birth, grow up to be psychologically damaged. All grow up with some psychological problem, proving that we not just want love, we need love. It's how we're made. So the scripture in Luke that Jesus Christ speaks jumps out at me. When I read this study, this jumps out as a verse. As ye would that men should do to you, want and need, do also to them likewise. As you desire to be loved, as you need to be loved, give that to others, knowing that they desire and need that as well. That's why Christ calls for love and for loving one another so often, knowing we feed each other's needs and wants. Why is love so daunting? This is just some studies that I looked up today. What does the original quest for love look like mathematically? By the time two people get married, women on the left, men on the right, the number of serious relationships that precede that, for women is 7, for men is 8. The number of disaster dates, which I found great humor in this, but I put it in there just for my own joy and entertainment. 4 disaster dates. Women have been on 2 blind dates, men have been on 3. Stood up on a date. Women have been stood up once, men have been stood up twice. I don't know why people keep going, but they do. Online dates. I'm definitely out of this world completely. There was no online when Candace and I met. But anyway, it's 2 for women, 3 for men. Number of kisses. This is a passionate kiss, by the way. 15 for women, 16 for men by the time they finally marry. Number of physical experiences. 7 for women, 10 for men. Number of relationships, a year or less, 3 and 4. Number of relationships, a year, more than a year, 2 and 2. Number of live-in relationships, each have had at least one live-in relationship. Number of times they declare that they have been in love. By the time they get married, they've been in love twice before. Number of heartbreaks, twice before. Maybe that's the number of times they've been in love, I'm assuming. Number of times the partner was unfaithful, 1 each. Number of times that particular individual being questioned was unfaithful, 1. And then number of long distance relationships. I score at 1 through these. Candace was both my long distance and my in love that I would count by the time I got married. How does our quest for love look like through other measurements? This one is your test, not percentages, not national norms. I want you to ask these questions of yourself. How many best or close friends do you enjoy today from your childhood? How many friends do you still have from your childhood? How many best or close friends do you, and I didn't want you to exclude close friends if you still have some that you don't consider best friends today, but still close. How many close or best friends do you enjoy from preschool days? How many best or close friends do you enjoy today from high school? Most of us claim 10 friends in high school. Some of you claim 200 friends and associates from high school. And if you had a larger high school like I did, I think we graduated 500. I would have claimed 500 associates, though that wouldn't be accurate. I would have claimed it though. How many do I still have from high school days today? How many best or close friends do you enjoy from college? Still. Why is love so daunting? Because maybe our numbers prove out for those reasons. Maybe our experiences with love are not as great as we may think until we start questioning. How many best or close friends do you enjoy today from your past jobs? As you leave a job, so often we think we're going to stay in touch. How many of you stayed in touch with? How many best friends? And usually these are people you probably have lunch with every day while you're at that workplace. Do you still even talk? Now, Facebook makes you believe you still have all those friends. I'm not talking about Facebook, quote unquote, friends. I'm talking about real friends. True love still alive. How many best friends, and that's do, not do, but how many best friends do you enjoy today from old addresses? What I meant by that is after high school, after college, as you start moving, Candace and I lived in Lake Worth, Florida. Then we lived in Pompano Beach, Florida. Then we lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. How many friends from those neighborhoods that you were so close with do you still enjoy today as close friends? How many, take all those questions and throw them out the window now. If those are just too finite, just take these few questions. How many best or close friends have you enjoyed for 10 to 20 years? Is your answer 10? Is your answer 2? Is your answer 0? How many best or close friends have you enjoyed for more than 20 years? I lost a dear friend that was my best friend, hands down, all through high school. And he passed away a couple years ago. But when he passed, we were neither best nor close friends. Now, we would reconnect. I saw him at my 40th high school reunion, and Candace and I hung out with him all night, and we loved on each other. We gave him a hug and a kiss when we left. He gave Candace a hug and a kiss. We left. We have pictures together with him. Loved him. Quickly right back together in that moment. But I could not fairly assess him as a best or close friend other than that night or another single or maybe another night before. Prior to that, we had stayed in touch, but in the last 10 years or so, we kind of drifted apart. So I have very few, if any, best or close friends for more than 20 years. And why do you think, I want you to answer this question, at least in your heart, why do you think this has occurred? Whether good or bad, pro or con, why has this occurred? That you have some or that you have none? What does our quest for love in this life look like through all these different measurements? Remember what our theme tonight is. I want to know what love is. The Word of God in Corinthians says that love sustains. Why did my love not sustain these relationships? I genuinely loved some of these people. Why not still? All right. Even to such a level of this. And what I'm trying to draw in all of these is love is fleeting. Love is not what you may think it is. Love is not always, it doesn't always bring joy, but in fact, the majority of relationships end poorly for us. And maybe that's why love is so daunting, because trust is so hard to give up when the relationships and the track records are so poor. So I've heard people list animals or pets as having unconditional love. First off, I mean to offend no one with my interpretation of this. So please don't be offended at this. This is just my take on it. Okay, so I understand the thinking behind the sentiment. This pets seem to love purely, despite how we may treat them, and I define mistreatment. Sometimes it's just ignoring them, and sometimes ignoring them is circumstantial. As young people, as we maybe both husband and wife are working, you have to leave all day long and go to work, and so the animal is left home for 10 hours at a time by itself, ignored. And yet when we walk into the house, that dog goes crazy to greet us, and we feel all kinds of love. We call that unconditional love. I understand that interpretation. I just don't agree. So here's the reason why, and there's many more reasons, but here's my reason why. Candace and I received a dog from a church member early in our marriage, and this dog loved its previous owner. And then we fed him, and all of a sudden he loved us and forgot his previous owner. We could say their names all day long. He wouldn't move. He just loved us, and we would open a can of food and he'd love us more. And we felt what we felt, it seemed like it was unconditional love. Each time we came back home or showed him any attention, loved this dog. And then he ran away. We left the front door open one night. It was actually a Wednesday night. We came home from church, left the front door open while we brought Courtney in, who was a baby at the time, put her in her crib, went to bed, and forgot. I don't know how we did this in South Florida, but we forgot to close the front door. The dog got out, never to return. We searched everywhere. We called for him. In my mind, we put up posters, but I don't think we did it all. But we asked neighbors. We called for Pee-wee, calling him, never came home, gone forever, sadly. By the way, I love this story, and it's just my sickness, my sick sense of humor, but I love this story, and it's true, 100%. 8 years, we never saw that dog again. When we moved away from Fort Lauderdale in our van and headed for Kentucky, we drove up the same street that we lived on, 44th Court, I think it was. We drove up the street to drive away. I went through the neighborhood to kind of see the neighborhood, maybe for the last time ever, conjure up some, or create some tears and some sentiment as we're driving out. And as we're driving out of our neighborhood, probably 5 or 6 houses down from where we lived, where we passed at least 2 or 3 times a week, there were children playing in the front yard of this neighbor's house with this little gray, dark gray, almost blackish little poodle. And we kept driving. And as we got past, I looked at Candace and she looked at me and I said, "Was that Pee-wee?" Our dog had run away 5 houses away from us and lived with the third house it's lived in, lived with a church member, given to us, loved us, quote unquote unconditionally, ran away and lived 5 houses away from us for 8 years. We never saw this dog, and he was playing with his family and unconditionally loving these kids running in the front yard. So I believe that a dog loves whoever feeds it and takes care of it. That's not unconditional love. That's love to receive back. We may receive that as unconditional love, but that's not what God meant when he defined unconditional love. Result of love, result of why it's so difficult. Sinners are drawn to Jesus Christ by his unconditional love for us. I want you to consider that we felt his love when we were least deserving. We felt we were least deserving because we were least deserving in that moment. Yet we experienced his pure, unadulterated, unconditional love. He loved us in spite of. The word identifies this unconditional love clearly when it says this, for God so loved the world. I know it goes on to say that he sent. And it goes on to say that those who accept Jesus Christ. I know it goes on to say many other things, but I want you to hear why God sent his son. Because God loved the world so much that he sent his son to sacrifice. That every single individual, in whatever condition they are, were loved equally by God when he sent his son. That's unconditional love. And that's what few of us have experienced, if any of us, outside of the love that we felt from Jesus Christ. And that's why love is so daunting. All right, here's your homework assignment for this week. The first question is this: what is your earliest memory of love? If you can, if you would, I'd love for you to write these down. By the way, start with the last and then I'll give you your assignment. I'd like to start next week off with you sharing some of your answers from this assignment. So first is, what is your earliest memory of love? I've shared with Candace my earliest memory. I know what it is right now, Little Rock, Arkansas. And I found out later when I defined this room to my mom that it was a hotel room, a motel room, actually, a motel room where I had split my head open. And I think the trauma, I always believe that early memories are inspired by and brought on by some traumatic experience. I had split my head open jumping on the bed and fell on the bed and cut my head open and got a couple stitches. That's my earliest memory, not my earliest memory of love. I want you to go to that earliest time you remember something in your life that defined love for you. Homework assignment number 2. I want you to identify your favorite love song. Number 3, identify your favorite love hymn. And the reason I did that is some of you were going to come back with a favorite love song next week, and it was going to be Love, Oh What Love from the Songs of Zion, and we weren't going to go much further than that. So I want you to give me 2 different songs, a favorite love song and then a favorite love hymn. Part 4, find a poem on love. You may already have a favorite, but if you don't, find a poem about love and why you choose that one. Don't go Googling poems on love and the first one to come up, write it down just to do your assignment. This is not a 9th grade assignment. This is one that I want to impact your life, and maybe your homework assignment will impact us. So try to search for something significant that has meaning to you. And then lastly, find a quote on love that you find significant and meaningful and maybe even moving to you. Earliest memory of love. favorite love song, favorite love hymn, poem on love, quote on love.